How are you guys doing? Today is Sunday, January 2nd, 2022. I'm James Sims, and for this episode of The Elite, I'm going to review the Elite matchups and performances that took place yesterday on the very first day of 2022, New Year's Day. And just to take a quick look at where we are at the beginning of the 2022 year. Starting off with football, most of the bowl games are over, and looking at the teams that are competing for the national championship, there are still two teams left. They are Alabama and Georgia, and they will compete next Monday in the college football championship. And of course, we're going to inch towards that day by day. And of course, after yesterday's games, the only bowl game left will be played on Tuesday. So that's a good sense of what's going on there. I'll get into the NFL in a second, or I'll get into college football in a second. Taking a look at the NFL, we still have 2 weeks of football left in the season, as the second to last Sunday of the 2021-22 NFL season is today. And of course, college and pro basketball are well underway. College basketball is starting to get into its conference schedule. The NBA starting to getting almost to the midway point of the season, and soccer's already at the midway point of the season, considering we are in 2022 already. We're in the back half of those seasons. So with that said, I'm going to dive right into college football and look at all the bowl games that were played yesterday. Of course, the New Year's bowl games, the bigger bowl games that aren't the college football semifinals. So starting with the 5th ranked team in the nation, the Notre Dame Fighting Irish faced off against the 9th ranked Oklahoma State Cowboys out of the Big 12. Oklahoma State would end up beating Notre Dame 37-35. Notre Dame outscored Oklahoma State 28-14 in the first half. Oklahoma State would outscore Notre Dame 23-7 in the second half. Notre Dame would lose their lead in the third quarter, and Oklahoma State would really run away with it after they outscored Notre Dame 17-0 in the third quarter. And looking at how both teams fared, on the losing end of this matchup, the 5th-ranked Fighting Irish were led by their starting quarterback, Jack Cohn. And, of course, this being the PlayStation Fiesta Bowl, very big game. Cohn would throw for 509 yards, 5 touchdowns, and an interception. Notre Dame's leading receiver was Lorenzo Styles Jr. He had 8 receptions for 136 yards and a touchdown. Chris Tyree had 6 receptions for 115 yards and a touchdown. Kevin Austin Jr. had 6 receptions for 105 yards and a touchdown. Michael Mayer had 7 receptions for 72 yards in the last 2 touchdowns of the day. On the defensive side of this matchup, Clarence Lewis would lead the Fighting Irish in tackles. He had 10 of them. On the winning end of this matchup, the 9th-ranked Oklahoma State Cowboys were led by their starting quarterback, Spencer Sanders. Sanders was their leading rusher as well, but he threw for 371 yards and 4 touchdowns. He ran for 125 yards on the day. That was 496 total yards of offense in his name. Their second leading rusher, Jalen Warren, had 19 carries for 82 yards. He also had 6 receptions for 34. He finished with 116 total yards of offense. Oklahoma State's leading receiver, Brendan Presley, had 10 receptions for 137 yards. Their second leading receiver, Tay Martin, had 10 receptions for 104 yards and 3 of the team's 4 touchdowns. On the defensive side of the ball, their leading tackler and the game's leading tackler was Malcolm Rodriguez. He had 11 tackles. Devin Harper would finish with 10 tackles himself. Brock Martin had 3 tackles, as he had both of the team's sacks. And not to mention that Malcolm Rodriguez would also have the team's lone interception as well as the team's high-end tackles. With this PlayStation Fiesta Bowl win, the 9th-ranked Oklahoma State Cowboys will finish their 2021 season with a 12-2 record out of the Big 12. And with this loss, the 5th-ranked Notre Dame Fighting Irish, who are independents, would finish their 2021 season with a 11-2 record. Of course, taking a look at the next big bowl game that took place yesterday, jumping all the way out to Los Angeles, Pasadena, as a matter of fact, looking at the 6th-ranked team in the nation. The 6th-ranked Ohio State Buckeyes would face off against the 11th-ranked Utah Utes in the Rose Bowl, as of course this is the one that features the Big Ten and the Pac-12 matchup. Ohio State would end up beating Utah 48-45 as they had to come from behind to win. Utah outscored Ohio State 35-21 in the first half, and then Ohio State would have to outscore Utah 27-10 in the second half in order to come back from behind and win this. The score was tied at 45 coming in, and Ohio State would have to tie it up, eventually take the lead. Utah would tie the score up with about 2 minutes left, and then Ohio State would drive the ball down the length of the field and kick a 19-yard winning field goal to pick up this big win, especially while they had their best two wide receivers opting out. On the losing end of this matchup, the Utah Utes were led by their starting quarterback, Cameron Rising. He threw for 214 yards and 2 touchdowns. He would also run for 92 yards and a touchdown as he was the team's leading rusher. He would go on to finish with 306 total yards of offense with his 3 touchdowns. Their second leading rusher, Tavion Thomas, had 18 carries for 67 yards and a touchdown. And then their leading receiver, Brant Keith, finished with 6 receptions for 77 yards on the day. And then on the defensive side of the ball, Micah Bernard would lead the Utah Utes in tackles. He finished with 10 of them. Clark Phillips III would log the team's lone interception as he had 5 tackles. On the winning end of this matchup, the 6th-ranked Ohio State Buckeyes were led by their starting quarterback, C.J. Stroud. He threw for 573 yards, 6 touchdowns, and an interception. He also ran for 10 yards. So that's 583 total yards of offense. Their leading rusher, Travion Henderson, had 17 carries for 83 yards. He also had 4 receptions for 27 yards. He would go on to finish with 110 total yards of offense. Their leading receiver, Jackson Smith Njigba, finished with 15 receptions for 347 yards and 3 touchdowns. I imagine that's definitely a Rose Bowl record. I have no idea if that's a bowl game record too. That's a lot of yards in one game. Their second leading receiver, Marvin Harrison Jr., had 6 receptions for 71 yards as he had the other 3 receiving touchdowns on the team. On the defensive side of the ball, their leading tackler and the Rose Bowl's leading tackler was Tommy Eichenberg. He would finish with 17 tackles on the day. And with this win, the 6th-ranked Ohio State Buckeyes out of the Big Ten will finish their 2021 season with an 11-2 record. With this loss, the 11th-ranked Utah Utes, who won the Pac-12 conference, by the way, will go on to finish their season with a 10-4 record, just to get a sense of where they sit. Jumping out to see what's going on with the 7th-ranked team in the nation, the Baylor Bears faced off against the 8th-ranked Ole Miss Rebels in the All-State Sugar Bowl. And in this matchup, Baylor would beat Ole Miss 21-7. They shut Ole Miss out 7-1 in the first half and then outscored Ole Miss 14-7 in the second half. Their 14 coming in the fourth quarter after Ole Miss tied the game up. On the losing end of this matchup, the 8th-ranked Ole Miss Rebels were led by their starting quarterback, Matt Corral, who only threw for 10 yards and an interception. He even ran for 17 yards. He had 27 total yards of offense, but he would eventually get subbed out for Luke Altmaier. Altmaier threw for 174 yards, a touchdown, and 2 interceptions. Ole Miss's leading receiver was Dontario Drummond. He finished with 9 receptions for 104 yards. On the defensive side of the ball, the Rebels' leading tackle was Chance Campbell. He finished with 10 on the day. Miles Battle would log the team's lone interception as he had a tackle as well. On the winning end of this matchup, the 7th-ranked Baylor Bears were led by their starting quarterback, Jerry Bohannon. He threw for 40 yards, a touchdown, and an interception. Their leading rusher, Abram Smith, had 25 carries for 172 yards, as he also had a 6-yard reception, so that's 178 total yards of offense. And on the defensive side of the ball, Terrell Bernard finished with 17 tackles, as he had 2 of the team's 10 sacks, by the way. Bryson Jackson finished with 4 tackles, as he had 2 sacks as well. JT Woods would finish with 2 interceptions on the day, as he also went on to finish with 4 tackles for himself. And then the 3rd interception for the team went to Al Walcott. He would go on to return a 96-yard pick 6, as he would go on to finish with no tackles. That was his only contribution, but that was a very big contribution. With this win, the 7th-ranked Baylor Bears out of the Big 12 will finish their 2021 season with a 12-2 record. With this loss, the 8th-ranked Ole Miss Rebels out of the SEC will finish their 2021 record with a 2021 season with a 10-3 record. Now taking a look at what went down in the Verbo Citrus Bowl, the 15th-ranked Iowa Hawkeyes faced off against the 22nd-ranked Kentucky Wildcats. Kentucky would end up beating Iowa 20-17. Kentucky outscored Iowa 13-3 in the first half. Iowa would outscore Kentucky 14-7 in the second half. And Iowa did take the lead with about 11 minutes left. Kentucky would take the lead back with a 6-yard run from Chris Rodriguez Jr. with less than 2 minutes left, and they would keep Iowa from scoring a field goal to even tie it up. On the losing end of this matchup, the 15th ranked Hawkeyes were led by their starting quarterback Spencer Petras. He would go on to throw for 211 yards, a touchdown, and 3 interceptions. Their leading rusher Gavin Williams had 16 carries for 98 yards. He even had 14 yards through the air. That's 112 total yards of offense. Their leading receiver Sam Laporta had 7 receptions for 122 yards and the team's lone receiving touchdown. Their leading tackler Jack Campbell finished with 14 tackles on the day. Their second leading tackler Seth Benson had 10 for himself. Zach Van Valkenburg would finish with 8 tackles as he had 2 of the team's 6 sacks. And Jamari Harris would finish with the team's lone interception as he had 6 tackles as well. On the winning end of this matchup, the 22nd ranked Kentucky Wildcats were led by their starting quarterback Will Levis. He threw for 233 yards, a touchdown, and an interception. Their leading rusher Chris Rodriguez Jr. had 20 carries for 107 yards and the game-winning touchdown on the ground. He even had 5 yards. He also had a 5-yard reception through the air, and that was a touchdown. That's 112 total yards for him and 2 touchdowns. Kentucky's leading receiver was Wandale Robinson. He had 10 receptions for 170 yards. On the defensive side of the ball, their leading tackler was Jordan Wright. He was the lone player with double-digit tackles. He had 10 of them. The team's 3 interceptions would go to De'Aric Jackson, DeAndre Square, and Quandre Mosley. Jackson finished with 7 tackles alongside his interception. DeAndre Square had 6 tackles and a tackle for loss. And then Quandre Mosley would go on to finish with 4 tackles with his interception. With this win, the 22nd ranked Kentucky Wildcats out of the SEC will finish their season with a 10-3 record. And with this loss, the 15th ranked Iowa Hawkeyes out of the Big Ten West, the Big Ten West champs actually, went on to finish with a 10-4 record as they also lost the Big Ten championship as well. Last but not least, taking a look at what went down with the 21st ranked team in the nation, the Arkansas Razorbacks faced off against the unranked Penn State and Nittany Lions at the Outback Bowl. Arkansas would win this game 24-10. Penn State outscored Arkansas 10-7 in the first half. Arkansas would shut Penn State out 17-0 in the second half as neither team scored in the fourth quarter. All 17 of their points scored were in the third quarter. On the losing end of this matchup, the unranked Nittany Lions were led by their starting quarterback Sean Clifford. He threw for 195 yards, a touchdown, and 2 interceptions. He was also the team's leading rusher as he ran for 46 yards. That is 241 total yards of offense. In their receiving core, their leading receiver was Parker Washington. He had 7 receptions for 98 yards. Their second leading receiver, Keandre Lambert-Smith, had 3 receptions for 74 yards in the team's lone offensive touchdown, or the team's lone touchdown. On the defensive side of the ball, Curtis Jacobs had finished with the team high in tackles. He had 10 of them. He also had one of the team's 5 sacks. Smith Vilbert would finish with 4 tackles as he would have 3 sacks for the day. Jair Brown would finish with both of the team's interceptions, as he would go on to finish with 6 tackles as well. On the winning end of this matchup, the 21st ranked Arkansas Razorbacks were led by their starting quarterback, KJ Jefferson. He threw for 98 yards and he ran for 110 and a touchdown on the ground. That would combine, of course, for 208 total yards of offense as he would go on as his lone touchdown came on the ground, like I just said. Arkansas's second leading rusher, Raheem Sanders, finished with 13 carries for 79 yards and 2 touchdowns. Their third leading rusher, Dominic Johnson, finished with 11 carries for 77 yards on the ground. On the defensive side of the ball, Arkansas's leading tackler was Joe Faucha. He finished with 6 tackles and a sack, as well as Hayden Henry, who finished with 6 total tackles and the team's other sack. Joe Faucha, in addition to having 6 tackles and a sack, would finish with an interception for himself. The other interception for the team went to Greg Brooks Jr., who had 3 tackles. With this win, the 21st ranked Arkansas Razorbacks out of the SEC will finish with a 9-4 record. And with this loss, the unranked Penn State Nittany Lions out of the Big Ten will finish with a 7-6 record for the 2021 and slightly 2022 season. Taking a look at what went down in the world of college basketball, starting off with the top-ranked team in the nation, the reigning national champs, the Baylor Bears, faced off against the 8th-ranked Iowa State Cyclones. And the defending champs, Baylor Bears, would end up beating the 8th-ranked Iowa State Cyclones 77-72 to give Iowa State their very first loss of the season. The Baylor won this matchup by they won this matchup by 5 after they outscored Iowa State by 8 in the first half. On the losing end of this matchup, the 8th-ranked Iowa State Cyclones were led in scoring by their starting guard, Tristan Enaruna. Their junior out of the Netherlands would go on to finish with 23 points, as well as 8 rebounds and 3 steals in 28 minutes. He shot 8 for 11 from the field and 7 for 8 from the foul line. On the winning end of this matchup, the top-ranked Baylor Bears were led in scoring by their starting guard, James Akinjo, out of Oakland. He finished with 16 points in 33 minutes. He shot 6 for 12 from the field, a perfect 2 from 3. He shot a perfect 2 for 2 from 3 as well. With this win, the top-ranked Baylor Bears are now 13-0 as they are now 1-0 in the Big 12. With this loss, the 8th-ranked Iowa State Cyclones are now 12-1. They are now 0-1 to start their Big 12 season. Staying within the Big 12 and looking at the 6th-ranked team in the nation, the Kansas Jayhawks hosted the unranked George Mason Patriots. Kansas would end up beating George Mason 76-67. They won this matchup by 9 after they outscored George Mason by 11 in the first half. On the winning end of this matchup, the 6th-ranked Jayhawks were led in scoring by their guard off the bench, Jalen Coleman-Lands, out of Indianapolis. He will go on to finish with 20 points and 2 blocks in 25 minutes. He shot 7 for 9 from the field, 5 for 7 from 3, and he made one of his 2 free throw attempts on the night. Taking a look at what went down with the 15th-ranked team in the nation, the Seton Hall Pirates hosted the 22nd-ranked Villanova Wildcats. Villanova will go on to beat Seton Hall 73-67. They won this matchup by 6 by outscoring Seton Hall by 3 in both quarters. On the losing end of this matchup, the 15th-ranked Seton Hall Pirates were led in scoring by their guard off the bench, Bryce Aiken, out of Randolph, New Jersey. He finished with 22 points and 2 steals in 31 minutes. He shot 5 for 11 from the field, 2 for 5 from 3, and he shot 10 for 12 from the foul line. On the winning end of this matchup, the 22nd-ranked Villanova Wildcats were led in scoring by their starting guard, Colin Gillespie. The senior out of Pennsylvania finished with 21 points in 30 minutes as he fouled out. He would shoot 6 for 12 from the field. He shot 4 for 8 from 3, and he shot 5 for 6 from the foul line. With this win, the 22nd-ranked Villanova Wildcats are now 9-4 as they are now 2-1 in the Big East. With this loss, the 15th-ranked Seton Hall Pirates are now 9-3 as they are 0-2 in the Big East to start their season. Taking a look at the 17th-ranked team in the nation, the Texas Longhorns hosted the unranked West Virginia Mountaineers. Texas would end up beating West Virginia 74-59 as this was each team's first Big 12 matchup of the season. Texas won this matchup by 15 after they outscored West Virginia by 19 in the first half. On the winning end of this matchup, the Texas Longhorns were led in scoring by their starting guard, Marcus Carr, out of Toronto. He will go on to finish with 20 points and 2 steals in 34 minutes. He will go on to shoot 7 for 11 from the field, 2 for 5 from 3, and 4 for 5 from the foul line. With this win, the 17th-ranked Texas Longhorns are now 11-2 as they are 1-0 in the Big 12. With this loss, the unranked West Virginia Mountaineers are 11-2 as they are 0-1 in the Big 12. Last but not least, taking a look at what's going on with the 21st ranked team in the nation, the Providence Friars faced off against the DePaul Blue Demons in Chicago. Providence would end up beating DePaul 70-53. They won this matchup by 17 after they outscored DePaul by 25 in the first half. On the winning end of this matchup, the 21st ranked Friars were led in scoring by their starting guard, Al Durham. Their senior out of Georgia would go on to finish with 17 points in 38 minutes. He shot 5 for 10 from the field. He shot 2 for 3 from 3 and 5 for 6 from the foul line. With this win, Providence is now 13-1 on the season. They are 3-0 in the Big East. With this loss, unranked DePaul is 9-3 as they are 0-2 in the Big East. Taking a look at what's going on what's going on today in the world of college basketball, especially at this very moment. The 10th ranked Michigan State Spartans are going to face off against Northwestern. They're the top team playing today. 12th ranked Houston's going to face off against Temple at 5, and then 13th ranked Ohio State's going to face off against unranked Nebraska. That matchup is going to be on Big Ten Network just to get a better sense of how that's shaping out. Taking a look at what's going on in the NFL, all the NFL matchups will be taking place today. Just looking down the board, starting with the 1 o'clock games. The Falcons will be facing off against the Buffalo Bills in Buffalo. The New York Giants will be facing off against the Bears in Soldier Field. The Kansas City Chiefs are going to face off against the Cincinnati Bengals in Paul Brown Stadium in Cincinnati as both of these teams are fighting for playoff positioning. Chiefs not as much as the Bengals. The Tennessee Titans are going to host the Miami Dolphins as the Miami Dolphins are still trying to fight for a playoff spot as well. The Indianapolis Colts are hosting the Oakland Raiders as those two teams are both both those teams are fighting for playoff spots. The New England Patriots are hosting the Jacksonville Jaguars as the Patriots are still fighting for a spot. The Buccaneers are going to New York to face off against the Jets as the Buccaneers are still fighting for playoff seeding. The Washington football team is going to host the Philadelphia Eagles as both of those teams are still fighting for playoff positioning. Washington not as much as the Eagles. The Baltimore Ravens are going to face off against the LA Rams. And at 4:05, the Los Angeles Chargers are going to face the Broncos. The Niners are going to host the Texans. The Cowboys are going to host the Arizona Cardinals. The New Orleans Saints are going to host the Carolina Panthers. And the Seattle Seahawks are going to host the Detroit Lions. And then, of course, finishing it up tonight, the Green Bay Packers are going to host the Minnesota Vikings on NBC. So that's how the NFL is shaping up. Taking a look at yesterday's NBA performances, starting off in Milwaukee with the defending champs, the Milwaukee Bucks would end up beating the New Orleans Pelicans 136-113. The Bucks would win this one by 23 after they outscored the New Orleans Pelicans by 15 in the second half. On the losing end of this matchup, the Pelicans were led in scoring by their center off the bench, Jackson Hayes. He finished with 23 points and 7 rebounds in 28 minutes. He shot 9 for 12 from the field and a perfect 5 for 5 from the foul line. On the winning end of this matchup, the Milwaukee Bucks were led in scoring by their elite starting power forward out of Greece, Giannis Antetokounmpo. He finished with 35 points, 16 rebounds, 10 assists, and 2 steals in 32 minutes. And alongside his triple-double, he would shoot 12 for 18 from the field, 2 for 4 from 3, and he would shoot 9 for 12 from the foul line. Their small forward off the bench, Jordan Nwora, finished with 23 points in 19 minutes as he shot 9 for 11 from the field and 5 for 7 from 3. Their starting point guard, Drew Holiday, finished with 21 points, 6 assists, 2 steals, and 2 blocks in 33 minutes. He shot 8 for 14 from the field, 1 for 3 from 3, and a perfect 4 for 4 from the foul line. With this win, the Milwaukee Bucks are now 25-13, and with this loss, the New Orleans Pelicans are now 13-23. Taking a look at what went down in Detroit, the Pistons hosted the San Antonio Spurs. The Pistons would go on to beat the Spurs 117-116 in overtime. On the losing end of this matchup, the San Antonio Spurs were led in scoring by their shooting guard off the bench, Bryn Forbes. He finished with 27 points and 7 rebounds in 35 minutes as he shot 10 for 22 from the field, 5 for 10 from 3, and 2 for 3 from the foul line. On the winning end of this matchup, the Pistons were led in scoring by their starting shooting guard, Hamidou Diallo. He finished with 34 points, 14 rebounds, 4 assists, 5 steals, and 2 blocks in 50 minutes. He shot 13 for 32 from the field and 8 for 9 from the foul line. Their starting small forward, Saddiq Bey, finished with 21 points, 17 rebounds, and 2 steals, as well as 5 turnovers in 47 minutes. He shot 7 for 23 from the field, and he would go on to shoot 5 for 6 from the foul line. Their starting center, the all-time leading scorer at the University of Iowa, Luka Garza, finished with 20 points and 14 rebounds in 40 minutes. He shot 7 for 12 from the field, 1 for 2 from 3, and with this win, the Detroit Pistons are now 6-28. That is the worst record in the entire NBA, and of course, it's the worst record in the NBA in the Eastern Conference. They currently sit 11 games behind the 8th-seeded Washington Wizards for a playoff spot at the moment. With this loss, the San Antonio Spurs are now 14-21. That is currently the 11th best or the 5th worst record in the Western Conference. They currently trail the 8th seed Dallas Mavericks by 3 games for a playoff spot at the moment. Taking a look at what went down in our nation's capital, the Washington Wizards hosted the Chicago Bulls. The Bulls would end up beating the Wizards 120-119 as DeMar DeRozan would end up hitting a game winner on back-to-back nights. The Bulls won this one by 1 after they outscored the Wizards by 13 in the second half. On the losing end of this matchup, the Wizards were led in scoring by their starting small forward, Kyle Kuzma. Kuzma finished with 29 points, 12 rebounds, and 2 steals in 40 minutes. He shot 12 for 18 from the field, 2 for 5 from 3, and 3 for 5 from the foul line. Their elite starting shooting guard, Bradley Beal, finished with 27 points, 2 rebounds, 17 assists, and 4 steals in 43 minutes. He shot 8 for 20 from the field and 11 for 13 from the foul line. On the winning end of this matchup, the Chicago Bulls were led in scoring by their starting shooting guard, Zach Levine. He finished with 35 points and 5 rebounds in 38 minutes. He shot 11 for 22 from the field, 7 for 12 from 3, and he made all 6 of his free throw attempts on the night. Their starting small forward, DeMar DeRozan, would finish with 28 points, 9 rebounds, and 5 assists in 35 minutes. He shot 10 for 22 22 from the field, and he made his only 3 on the day as he shot 7 for 10 from the foul line. Their starting center, Nicola Vucic, finished with 22 points, 12 rebounds, and 5 turnovers in 35 minutes. He shot 9 for 15 from the field. He shot 3 for 7 from 3, and he made his only free throw attempt on the night. The Bulls starting point guard, Kobe White, finished with 20 points and 5 assists in 38 minutes. He shot 7 for 14 from the field, 4 for 8 from 3, and a perfect 2 for 2 from the foul line. With this win, the Chicago Bulls are 24-10. With this loss, the Washington Wizards are 18-18. The Chicago Bulls at 24-10 are holding the best record in the East as they sit 1 game ahead of the second place Brooklyn Nets. And of course, with this loss, the Wizards are holding on to that 8th seed in the Eastern Conference as they sit 7 games behind the Chicago Bulls. Jumping out to Brooklyn, the Brooklyn Nets hosted the LA Clippers. The Clippers would beat the Nets 120-116. They won this matchup by 4 after they outscored the Nets by 11 in the fourth quarter. On the losing end of this matchup, the Brooklyn Nets were led in scoring by their elite starting shooting guard out of Arizona State, James Harden. The former NBA MVP finished with 34 points, 12 rebounds, and 13 assists in 40 minutes. He shot 9 for 12 from the field, 3 for 11 from 3, and 13 for 15 from the foul line. The Nets' goated starting power forward, Kevin Durant, finished with 28 points, 9 rebounds, and 3 assists in 39 minutes. He shot 11 for 24 from the field, 2 for 6 from 3, and 4 for 5 from the foul line. On the winning end of this matchup, the LA Clippers were led in scoring by their starting shooting guard, Eric Bledsoe. Bledsoe finished with 27 points and 3 steals, as well as 2 blocks in 30 minutes. Bledsoe shot 8 for 12 from the field, 4 for 6 from 3, and 7 for 9 from the foul line. With this win, the LA Clippers are now 19-18, and with this loss, the Brooklyn Nets are now 23-11. So taking a look now at what went down in before I taking a look at where the Clippers sit after this win, they're holding the 6th best record in the West as they sit 10 games behind the Golden State Warriors. And with this loss, the Brooklyn Nets are now holding the 2nd best record in the East as they sit a game behind the Chicago Bulls. Taking a look at what went down in Houston, the Rockets hosted the Denver Nuggets. The Nuggets would beat the Rockets 124-111. The Rockets won this matchup by 13 after they outscored the Rockets by 23 points in the second quarter alone. On the losing end of this matchup, the Houston Rockets were led in scoring by their starting shooting guard, their number 2 overall pick, Jalen Green. Jalen Green finished with 29 points in 28 minutes as he shot 6 for 13 from the field. He shot 5 for 8 from 3 and 12 for 14 from the foul line. On the winning end of this matchup, the Denver Nuggets were led in scoring by their elite starting center, the 2021 MVP, Nicola Jokic. He would go on to finish with 24 points, 11 rebounds, and 3 assists in 25 minutes. He shot 8 for 12 from the field, 1 for 2 from 3, and 7 for 9 from the foul line. Their starting point guard, Frank Campazzo, finished with 22 points, 12 assists, 5 steals, and 2 blocks in 34 minutes. He shot 7 for 11 from the field, 3 for 5 from 3, and a perfect 5 for 5 from the foul line. With this win, the Denver Nuggets are now 18-16. With this loss, the Houston Rockets are 10-27. The Rockets hold the worst record in the West. They sit 8 games behind the Dallas Mavericks, and with this win, the Denver Nuggets now hold the 5th best record in the West as they sit 9.5 games behind the first place Golden State Warriors. Speaking of the Golden State Warriors, the Warriors went to Utah and were able to beat the Utah Jazz, and that was the final game of yesterday. The Warriors beat the Jazz 123-116. They won this matchup by 7 after they outscored the Jazz by 12 in the fourth quarter to overcome their deficit. On the losing end of this matchup, the Utah Jazz were led in scoring by their elite starting shooting guard, Donovan Mitchell, their elite starting center, Rudy Gobert, their starting small forward, Bojan Bogdanovic, and their point guard off the bench, Jordan Clarkson. They each had 20 points. Mitchell finished with 20 points, 6 rebounds, 9 assists, and 2 steals in 36 minutes. He shot 4 for 19 from the field, 2 for 9 from 3, and 10 for 11 from the foul line. Gobert finished with 20 points, 19 rebounds, and 2 assists in 35 minutes. He shot 9 for 10 from the field and 2 for 4 from the foul line. Bojan Bogdanovic finished with 20 points and 6 rebounds in 35 minutes as he shot 7 for 14 from the field, 4 for 10 from 3, and a perfect 2 for 2 from the foul line. Jordan Clarkson finished with 20 points in 24 minutes. He shot 8 for 14 from the field and 4 for 7 from 3. On the winning end of this matchup, the Warriors were led in scoring by their goated starting point guard, the all-time leader in three-pointers made, Stephen Curry. Out of Davidson, he finished with 28 points, 6 rebounds, and 9 assists in 36 minutes. He shot 8 for 18 from the field, 6 for 12 from 3, and 6 for 7 from the foul line. Their starting small forward, former number 1 overall pick, Andrew Wiggins, finished with 25 points and 2 steals in 38 minutes. He shot 9 for 19 from the field, 4 for 6 from 3 as well. And their starting small forward, Otto Porter Jr., finished with 20 points, 7 rebounds, 8 assists, and 3 steals in 36 minutes. He shot 9 for 14 from the field and 2 for 4 from 3. With this win, the Golden State Warriors are now 28-7, and with this loss, the Utah Jazz are now 26-10. Warriors hold the best record in the West, and the Jazz hold the third best record as they sit 2.5 games behind them. So that's what the NBA is looking like, looking at what the NBA matchups are looking like today. Of course, starting out in Toronto, the Raptors are hosting the Knicks at 3:30. The Celtics host the Magic at 6. At the same time, the Cavs host the Pacers. That match is going to be on NBA TV. Kings are going to host the Heat at the same time. At 7, the Charlotte Hornets are going to host the Phoenix Suns, and the Thunder are going to host the Dallas Mavericks. And last but not least, at 9:30 in the Crypto.com arena, LeBron and the Lakers are going to host Ant Edwards, Karl Anthony Towns, and the Minnesota Timberwolves. Last but not least, looking out in the world of soccer, the only domestic league that was played was the Premier League. And of course, starting with Manchester City, they were able to beat Arsenal 2-1 after Arsenal scored the first goal of the game. Bukayo Saka, their young elite English forward, would score in the 31st minute. Manchester City would tie it off of a penalty kick from Riyad Mahrez in the 57th minute. And following that, 2 minutes later, Arsenal would pick up his 100th ever Premier League red card. It would be Gabriel to do it. And Rodri would score in the 93rd minute to give Manchester City the win. And with this win, they are sitting at the very top of the table, 10 points clear of Chelsea, as Chelsea has played one less game than Man City. Also, looking yesterday, Tottenham Hotspur was able to beat Watford 1-0 as its lone goal came in the 96th minute from Sanchez. With this win, Tottenham now 6th. They sit 6th in the Premier League table. Right now, they are currently sitting 20 points below Man City at the very top of the table, and they are 2 points below Arsenal with 2 less games played, as Arsenal's occupying that 4th spot in the Prem. But right now, that is everything that I have from yesterday. Looking forward to what's going on today in the world of soccer. Starting off in the Premier League, Liverpool will face off against Chelsea at 11:30. Chelsea holds the 2nd spot in the table. Liverpool holds the 3rd spot and Liverpool has 1 less game played. Chelsea only sits 1 game over Liverpool as Liverpool could leapfrog over Chelsea in this matchup. Taking a look at how things are faring in Ligue 1, of course, in France. Actually, no, they're playing in the French Coupe de France, so they're not even playing in the Ligue 1. But skipping over that a little bit, moving over to La Liga, Real Madrid is going to face off against Getafe, as Real Madrid is currently sitting at the very top of the table by 8 points. Atletico Madrid is going to face off against Rayo Vallecano at 10:15 a.m. as Atletico sits 5th in the Spanish table. They sit 17 points below top-seeded Real Madrid, and they sit 1 point below 4th-seeded Rayo Vallecano. So this will be a very big opportunity for them to jump up in the standings, as that would be the team that they would have to leapfrog in order to get into Champions League competition. And then also Barcelona is going to face off against Mallorca. Barcelona is sitting 7th in the table, but of course a win here could possibly see them at least jump into Europa League or even Champions League contention just after this 1 week. But of course we have to let all these games play out and see how they go. But with that said, I want to thank everyone for listening to all 33 minutes of this piece. I really do hope all is well. And once all of today's exhibitions and matchups are done, I'll come back tomorrow on Monday, January 3rd for another episode of The Elite. Also, I want to thank the ESPN, NCAA, FIFA, NFL, and NBA websites for giving me all the stats and figures that I needed. And I do apologize if I butchered some of the names along the way. But once again, thanks for listening to all of this as we navigate through the world of sports one day at a time. I'm James Sims, and this is The Elite. And I'll catch you with more tomorrow. But I actually have another piece today. So thanks for listening. I hope all is well, and peace out.